Hi there, I'm Leah, and welcome to the House of Hormones podcast. So, Jremy Vine, welcome to the House of Hormones podcast.
It's exciting for you. I don't know if it's exciting for you. It's for me. My knees are knocking. You can't see my knees, but they're knocking because blokes are scared of this subject. And when I saw "Will You Go on the House of Hormones" podcast, I made such a screeching noise. It was virtually 180-degree spin. But then I thought, no, I should, because unless blokes take part in this conversation, then we're not really getting anywhere. And I've got a lot of wonderful women listeners. In fact, I think the majority of listeners to my radio show are female. Maybe it's like 48%. So, all right, we're away. I'm here.
Well, I'd just like to thank you first from me, but also from our community and from women everywhere, because I think exactly what you've just said, it's really difficult for us to speak to men about this topic, to get men to feel confident to speak on this topic. And for us, even on this podcast, it's been really difficult to get male guests to come on. And the House of Hormones is an inclusive community. We really want to hear men's opinions, and we really want to hear, like, how can we educate men more? And we want to hear from you. So let's dig in. You've hosted thousands and thousands and thousands of debates, but how often has hormonal health or menopause, how often does it make it into the mainstream?
It's making it into the mainstream more and more. But I would say, so I've just worked out recently that I have taken 40,000 calls on my Radio 2 show since I started it on January the 6th, 2003.
Wow.
So I know. So I wish I could remember them all, because it'd be such a brilliant resource. Because, you know, the great discovery of news is that the news is not what we tell you, it's what you tell us. And it's what the listeners tell the presenter, not what the presenter tells the listeners. And so I hope, talking about Radio 2 predominantly, because that's what I've been doing for a long time, I hope we've been driven in certain directions by the audience. And one area is this area. So if you were looking at items we've done on the menopause, and I think we've done quite a few, but I reckon they'd all be in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think the taboo around it has probably only begun to break up in the last 5 years. And then I'm also not sure that it even has broken for blokes. That's why I said yes to coming on, because I think, I think blokes they're just very reluctant to get involved in things that they don't see as their business. The classic issue, not to get into it, but the trans issue, most blokes, and that's obviously a very vexed area in news and so on, blokes classically say, why can't we all just get on? Why can't we all just get along? And that is the classic bloke answer to a lot of difficult issues. So,
do you know why I'm laughing? Because my husband, I have to tell you this when we're on this topic, my husband, and please bear in mind, my husband's very well educated on women's health, and he has been a guinea pig for many topics, and he does very well to put up with having to listen to me air out my thoughts and ideas and new education that I've educated myself on. But he is kind of like a very understanding and lovely man, but kind of like a typical guy. And also we do have a sense of humor with each other where we can joke. And so I said to him, come on, like, tell me, what else can we do to educate men on this? What else can we do? And he went, just leave us alone. And I was like, bingo, that's it. He's right. So we need to find a way that kind of includes men, but in a way that's really easy. And I've got something exciting for you later, which is a bit of a game. We'll see whether that maybe helps. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right what you've just said.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? So actually behind me here is this Hitchcock poster, Vertigo. And Vertigo is a good example of something where unless you have it, you can't imagine it. So it involves feeling very, very sick when you're very, very high up. We all know that. But if you haven't got it, you can't really visualize it. You can't understand it. You have to just sympathize with people who've got it. But it's more than that, isn't it? Because we're trying to understand what it's like, and we're trying to understand what we can do to ameliorate the difficulties of it, whether it's vertigo or the menopause. But amidst all that, you've got a bit of a headwind. So you've got a generation of women, actually, I lower my voice immediately I say it, who are probably in their 70s, let's say, who are not going with the program here. So the classic example would be Anne Widdecombe, the politician, Strictly dancer. She would describe herself as a bit of a battle axe. Every time we talk about menopause on my TV show, I'm in my TV dressing room now at ITN for Channel 5. She just goes, "Oh, not this again," like that. And that's a woman, you know. And then she thinks, well, we never needed this in my day. And it maybe she didn't have a very drastic menopause, or maybe she did and she feels she got through it without anyone knowing or helping. So why should anyone else know or help with anyone else's menopause? So there's the difference between vertigo and menopause is that for some reason menopause information has a headwind. There's some people who are sort of against it. They want to either not listen, forcefully not listen, or actually argue against the whole thing and say this is nothing, was nothing in the 1960s. Why are we talking about it now? It's so interesting. So I think it's just a revelation to lots of blokes like me. My wife is not in the menopause as yet. Oh, she may be in the peri-menopause, but we're not really sure. She's like just turning 50. My mother, who's still with us, bless her, aged 86, if she ever, I mean, when she had the menopause, and say if she ever had it, when she had it, I would not have known. So she would have had it, she'd be gone through it, let's say 30 years ago, I don't know. It can be so variable. 30 years ago, I was 30. Nah, I would have had no concept, and she would never have given out to me about it. Blokes are probably dealing with the fact that their mothers would never have mentioned it. Blokes my age, which is a bad place to start from.
What do you think about menopause? The word menopause means that you haven't had a period in a year. So essentially menopause is only one day. So you can't really be like in the menopause unless you're talking about that one day, right? So you're kind of either perimenopausal or post-menopause, right? Because that's just one day that you haven't had a period in 12 months. Perimenopause and perimenopausal symptoms can very normally start at around 35, right? I'm 40 years old. So, 35, if you think of a 35-year-old, people don't think of perimenopause. That's not something you associate with. Have you ever heard that before? That perimenopause very normally can start at 35. I'm not saying it does, but it can.
Yeah, I think I do know this only not because I'm fantastically well educated about it, but because I present a radio show in which we've done every single subject under the sun.
Yeah.
Even things like, are wooden chopping boards better than plastic chopping boards, and why no one should ever own a mandolin, etc. Because we've done everything, we have, of course, met people. I have met people through my radio show who've gone into the menopause. I would say that's early. I remember somebody had terrible endometriosis, and this was actually only a month ago, and the only way of dealing with it in the end was to have a hysterectomy, which had triggered the menopause, and it triggered it at about 32. So that seems really early.
Yeah.
And when I talked about my mum, then you noticed how I'm going into the idea that the menopause starts at 50.
Yeah.
Because, for a number of reasons. Firstly, my lovely wife I don't think she's in it, but how would I know? I mean, she's not told me. I'll have to have a word with her. But I think all women at a certain point probably think of themselves as perimenopausal, because that's, it's coming. So you're in the run up. So that would be how my wife, I think, would describe herself if we got into the thicket of that.
Yeah.
But no, she's 49, and so I'm going on a 50-year-old thing, which is way too late, because you're right. A lot of people will be in it from their mid-30s.
Well,
and
on average, menopause is about 51, but that's when your period up. And
thank God I didn't get that wrong.
Yeah, the symptoms start way before that. But the thing is, women are very good at explaining away the symptoms, and often it's when you have young children. So if you're getting chronic fatigue, you might say, oh, but it's because of the kids, or the kids were up, or you also might be looking after older parents. So, we talk about this sandwich generation. So often women explain away and don't take their own symptoms seriously. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And I see that completely. But what you said there is that if the average age is about 50, then I wasn't far off, actually.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but also the other funny thing is that we're getting a lot of older mum stories now, and you're getting in the papers celebrities will have a child at 50, and sometimes there's surrogacy, sometimes it's in vitro. A lot of things seem to be shifting now.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, if they say I would have said we've had a story in the last 20 years where we've had a new mum at 75. There's some crazy story like that. So we all an age. I'm just about to turn 60, and then someone said to me, "It's the new 35." But it's not helpful in a way, because once we start saying that, the thing is that the menopause hasn't shifted,
Yeah.
and it's not in terms of at what point it strikes a woman's body. So our whole conversation about 60 is the new 35 is it's all very well until your body tells you actually you really are 60, and that can happen to me, it can happen to you.
But I think you're
um
absolutely right. And I think that's why a bigger conversation is needed. Because if we think about it, women didn't actually used to live as long, right? So exactly your point, you're so spot on. And I think that's why this is a bigger conversation, because women are living longer and they want to live well. They want to have a certain, value of life. And so they don't want to just completely be dismissed as soon as, or they don't want to, their bone health, their brain health, they don't want it all to fall off a cliff at a certain age and then to live the rest of their lives not capable of doing things.
yeah, for sure.
Obviously you have such a huge female base, and that's really changed maybe your perspective on certain things, or educated you more, or made you look into this topic a lot more so than maybe other men. What is it that brings so many women to your fan base, and is there a sense of responsibility for you with that?
It's not, I don't think it's a fan base that I have personally. I think it's more to do with Radio 2 and the history of the brilliant show that Radio 2, or the station it is. It's been over the years, and Terry Wogan, bless him, and Ken Bruce and Steve Wright and all these legends. And we're just very lucky that radio survived the internet avalanche. And then I've got this lovely 2-hour show of news and music in the middle of the day. And it's such a weird show where you combine news and you play records, and it somehow works. And yeah, it might just be to do with the way that our society is set up, that more, I hesitate to even say something as general as this, but more women are near radios at noon than men are. But even when I say that, I think that's a bit old fashioned, because, blokes, people are out in cars and doing something. I don't know really why it is. It might be that I think because I'm a male presenter, the last editor of my show was male. As it happens, the current one is male. I think we work against the stereotype that blokes do bloke stories. So we very rarely do sport. We very rarely do football stuff. We do a lot more stuff about, what's happening in your life. We do a lot of emotional stuff. We do when you cancel your own parents, and it's classically done by young women who decide for whatever reason that their parents have caused them a problem, and they now need to shut them out of their lives. It can happen for all kinds of reasons, and it's heartbreaking. So those kinds of stories are really good for us. I mean, I think it might also be, God, now I'm thinking out loud, it might be that if you decide to take a sort of more emotional approach to news, and you look for stories which have an emotional resonance, you tend to head into stories which are female focused, because blokes often they just don't speak that language a lot of the time. And it's a very bloke thing. I mean, I was watching some music once, and I was at a gig, and I was at this table. It was kind of a wine bar thing, and there was 3 couples, of whom I was part of a couple. And one of the other couples said, "Oh, we've just had twins," right? And the wife brought her phone out and said, "Have a look as a picture." And the 2 women, my wife and the other wife, said, "Oh, aren't they beautiful? What lovely babies." And the blokes all said, "Is that the X3 model with the stylus? Because I didn't know they were on the market yet. We just talked about the phone." So it's just a classic, and is that the one that folds out? We weren't even looking at the picture of the kids. And we know that the male mind is more mechanical like that. And forgive me for stereotyping, but I think it means that if you drift into sort of more emotional topics, you often feel that they're female centric, and that may or may not be good. It's like the Mickey Flanagan, the comedian, who I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Said this thing about he listens into his wife talking, and the way women talk to each other, he can't understand it. He said it's like his wife says to her friends, "How are you in yourself?" And he says, "I don't even know what that means. How are you in yourself?" So he's sort of it's like blokes just sit and talk about football.
Yeah.
That I know it's a stereotype, but it's kind of the truth as well. And then very small communications about, you've been a really good friend to me over 30 years. You might just suddenly get that, just for a second, then it's gone.
Yeah.
So we're not very good about talking about testicular cancer, which affects us. We're even less good about talking about stuff we can't see or understand because we don't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that more blokes are becoming a little bit more in touch with their feminine side, because that would really help us beat the rap of Andrew Tate and incels and all that horrible stuff.
Has your body ever done something weird or out of the norm? You've already went to the doctor, you've had your blood test, but you're still thinking, is this normal? Am I the only one that's dealing with this? Sometimes you just need to hear it from someone who actually gets it. And that's literally why we've created the House of Hormones Forum. Think your girls' group chat, but with an upgrade. The House of Hormones Forum is a safe space with zero judgment and a strong community of women who really get what you're going through, because they're going through it too. We're talking PMS, mood swings, cycle changes, cravings, all of it. And the best part is you've got real support with the House of Hormones Forum. So whether you just want to vent or you've come to ask questions, come and join us. It's given science meets sisterhood, so come and join the conversation at the House of Hormones Forum. We've saved you a seat. www.thehouseofhormones.com and just click forum. Well, I think you've touched on a really interesting point there, and I feel like this is my opinion too. Like, stereotypes are very different from like some stereotypes are fine. Like, I'll give you another example, right? It's completely kind of non-confrontational. I'm Irish and I love potatoes, right? And it's just true. And I'll love a whiskey every now and again. It's a stereotype and it's just true. And it doesn't, but I think sometimes we've gone a bit too far with certain stereotypes because they might be offensive. And of course there are some that are offensive, but with men and women, like, in my house, I mean, there's absolutely no sexism whatsoever. However, we do have very stereotypical roles in terms of what chores. You will not catch me putting a bin out. Like, it won't happen. I just won't do it. And I prefer to do the washing or you know what I mean? So we don't need to be as scared of stereotypes, because I know, sometimes when we're talking about it, everybody dances around them a bit. And I think we can embrace some of them,
I completely agree. I think you're right. We could also admit that some stereotypes touch on the truth, and they may not be true for everyone, but that's the whole point. It's like averages aren't true for everyone. Yeah. They're just averages.
Like, not every Irish person loves potatoes, but to be honest, I haven't met many that don't.
No, but I think where it becomes a problem is when Ed Sheeran sings Galway Girl, and it's she plays the fiddle in an Irish band. You just think, come on, mate. If he's not Irish himself, I'm not sure he should be really doing that one, But
did you know what? Irish people don't mind. We're kind of just like, it's a good song. Who cares? Like, it's fine,
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was a really good poll. There's very few good polls out, but one of them said it asked men and women to score the value of activities they do in the home and to score them for each other. So, for example, filling the dishwasher scored 5. And women scored it as 5, and blokes, let's say, scored it as 3. Doing all the laundry, women scored it as 6, 7. Blokes scored it as 4.
Right.
Going out and working, blokes scored that as 10, and women scored it as 3 or 4. Because actually, the bloke says, "Look, I'm going out doing a job here. I mean, I can't be expected, all of that." And it's the way. Actually, the value that's assigned is not about monetary value. It's much more about some of this stuff needs doing around the house, and we've got to share it.
Yeah.
And I know, again, we're massively on stereotypes here, and I always put the same voice on. But I do think it's very telling that this survey suggested that blokes assigned 10 out of 10 to leaving the house and working.
And arguably, listen, I've had 2 children, and I will say, going to work was the easiest thing that I've ever had to do in my whole entire life. So I would have scored that as 1. Looking at children, 25, right?
Exactly. And, it's so hard to get away from the clan. My mum and dad, classic, probably yours. Well, no, yours would be much younger than mine, but mine, were born in the 1930s. My dad's passed on now. My dad had a job with a final salary pension. He was basically a teacher in a higher education college. My mum was a housewife. She would have described herself like that. She brought up 3 children brilliantly, and she doesn't need any thanks for it. She then got a job as a receptionist in a doctor's surgery when we'd all left home, and she got a lot of satisfaction from that. Then my dad retired. They had their pension, and they had, and this doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist. The idea that people in their 20s can get a job with a pension for life, it's just not going to happen. So some of that is starting to break up naturally, I think.
Yeah.
But it's funny that thing of, I remember my dad is quite a religious guy, right? So he was once saying prayers at dinner, and he said, and my mum had cooked the whole meal. It was Sunday lunch, and she brought all the food, and my dad said, let's pray. And he said, Lord, we thank you for this food that seems to have just come out of nowhere. And my mum's like, excuse me. So, yeah, some of those things have shifted.
Well, so obviously you've got, in your house, you've got daughters, right? Has this changed how you look at things? And has this changed your mentality around, especially as they're getting older, around body image, around women's health, around all of these topics, body image?
Totally. But I was a bit upset because the other day on Twitter, I saw somebody saying, Twitter, X, whatever the hell that bloody garbage dumpster fire is, Someone said, I think it was a kind of a female account tweeting, I'm sick and tired of men saying that they really understand women's issues because they have daughters. I'm thinking like, oh God, I thought I'd got some kind of an insight here. For me, it was really precious. So I'm in a house full of women, it's me and 2 male cats, but everyone else is female. 2 beautiful daughters, aged 18 and 21, and my mum. Sorry, my wife.
Oh, God.
Please, can you take that out?
Absolutely not.
Oh, sorry, because I was talking about my mum. Sorry, and my wife. Please, sorry. Okay, let me just overlap there. Sorry, because I was talking about my mum and my wife. You should probably leave it in, actually. It's too funny.
I think you've mentioned your lovely wife, and you've spoken so highly of your wife many times.
Yeah.
You won't be
Please
don't. That little.
Let's get her confused. Let's not get her confused. I've come out in a rash now. And my wife. I was just with my mum yesterday, which is why I've gone into my mum zone. So yeah, I do feel that. I don't know. I feel like I've got a heightened awareness of women's things. Actually, not to sound like I'm suddenly an expert, but. So, for example, the safety of women. I was reading online the other day, it's about a lecturer in the States who said, okay, he's got a lecture theatre, 100 people in it, 50-50, male students, female students. And he said, I just want to try something here. If you've taken any decision at all in the last 24 hours to just preserve what I might call your sexual safety, your safety as a sexual person, let's say, I want you to go and stand by that wall over there. And if you've not had any thoughts about your sexual safety, stand up. And he said, every single man went to that wall over there, and every single woman went to that. Isn't that amazing?
Well, I was actually going to say a lot of men would probably be like, what do you mean by sexual? What does that even mean?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't have an idea. What's it exactly? And in fact, actually, I'm struggling for the phrase, because I can't remember what phrase he used, and I don't even know what phrase exists to mean keeping myself safe from sexual attack.
Yeah.
And every single woman stood by the wall over there. So, and I'm always, my youngest daughter likes to go jogging by the river, and she goes jogging in the winter by the river, and she has her headphones on. And do I say, look, watch out because, or do I say, no, we've got to have less people who threaten women by rivers. But then, of course, we're not there yet. So I never know what to say.
There's an amazing poet. I'll send it to you after, but there's an amazing poem by Caitlin O'Ryan. She's incredible, and she's gone viral multiple times for this poem, but it starts with, and I'm going to quote it and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's something like, and we've had her on the podcast, by the way, she's amazing. And the poem starts with, at what point do you tell a girl that parks are no longer for playing? And I was like, oh, because I have an 8-year-old daughter who of course plays in that, and just like it all flooded through my brain, and I thought, at what stage in my life did I realize I can't walk through that park on my own? I need to go the long way around. You know, like, it's just such a hard hitting poem. I'll send it to you. You will love it.
Certain things where you see, and it really upsets me when I see stories in the news about violence against women, just because of my own situation. So that not to go into a lot of detail on it, but the story of the guy, the ex-boyfriend who comes back with a crossbow and kills his ex-girlfriend and her sister and her mother, leaving only one sister and the father alive. You know, I mean, what is wrong? What's going on? And I suppose as a bloke, as a father, you're just watching for any of those red flags, the sort of possessiveness or the way people will diminish you, you know, make negative comments about you when you're dating and stuff. I don't know, suddenly I'm alive to stuff I've never ever considered before as a bloke. So and in terms of sort of what kind of female health and those things, I mean, I know there's a very lively conversation goes on between my daughters and my wife. I can only say I thought it was very interesting. I won't say which daughter it was, and this probably is a bit embarrassing to tell this story, but I was watching. I took one of my daughters to the pub to see a Chelsea game, and she said, "Dad, do you mind if I go home because it's my period and I haven't got any tampons?" And she was only about 16, 17. And I thought, blimey, back when I was that age, my sister would never have said that to my father, ever. I was really proud that she said it, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, that's credit to you that she felt comfortable saying to you, hey, Dad, look, this is the situation. I grew up with 3 brothers, and I remember putting sanitary towels up my sleeve to leave my bedroom to go to the bathroom. What's that about?
Yeah.
To go to the bathroom
indeed,
in your own house.
Isn't that strange? Yeah. The natural sort of biological barriers between family members over sex and so on, where you know, you kind of leave them to it because you don't want to be intrusive, you don't want to be asked too many questions. But just generally, I think we do have an open conversation. And I think the main thing is I just sort of feel I'm now slightly responsible for 2 young women in the world, and I do not want them predated on or overlooked.
You had, just to go back a little bit to the safety thing, you had a video on your Instagram. I seen it, and it was, I think you were out cycling and you had your camera on, and you caught on camera, honestly, like, you caught on camera this guy shouting out. These 2 young girls were like recording themselves or doing a little video or whatever it was. They were 2 cars, what they were doing.
Yeah.
And this guy shouts out of the car. What does he shout? You're not that pretty, love.
Well, that's exactly it. And I was really angry. And actually, the only reason I didn't go after him is because I've taken this vow to stop doing cycling videos, because my cycling videos went nuts, all of them, to the point where I'd had 100 million views. And I just got so much incoming about, you know, you shouldn't even be on the roads, you don't pay tax, and just all the sort of, I mean, some of the comments, because I could read them out again for you, because you saw them on my show.
I love that.
Just hilarious. I mean, just horrendous. I mean, a guy saying, "Why are you so anti-car? I bet your missus is getting shagged left, right, and centre by a car driver." I mean, it's just the male anger, actually, male anger. And again, this is the problem that I caused myself, because I said a lot. I gave an interview like a month ago, and I blurted out that I thought a lot of drivers were suffering from sexual frustration, because that's the only explanation I can get for how angry they are, that we've basically taken all the sexually frustrated men in London and locked them in small metal boxes and forced them to drive around. Anyway, that you know, you can imagine, didn't go well for me. So I still got my camera, because just in case something happens, I want to be able to report it. And I'm just standing, activating a line bike. And you're absolutely right. Across the road, there is 2 lovely young women, maybe aged about 22. And they were filming each other. And the producer or the floor manager just taken me to the bike. She walked me out the studio. And she said, "Oh, that's nice. They're TikToking over there." And they were doing something.
Yeah.
And I was just looking, thinking, "Oh, that's nice." And then this van driver drives past and shouts loud enough for me to hear, "You ain't that pretty, love." And why would you shout that? What's he trying to do, you know? So I crossed the road and I said, "I'm really sorry." And they said, "Oh, we didn't hear. What was it? We just heard the word love." So I said, "Oh, don't worry, nothing." And I thought, yeah, in a previous life, I would have gone after him and had, put him on my camera properly. Is it bad though? It's bad that he feels that he can shout that,
But isn't like exactly that? Isn't it weird that we're in a situation where people just feel entitled to comment on whatever, it's just bizarre. But again, like, I just wanted to highlight that because you actually caught this moment on camera, and women talk about this all the time, and they would even be dismissed if they were to, oh, it's just a joke.
There was a period, our roads are safer in London now, but there was a period where we had quite a lot of cyclists dying, and they were nearly, and I was looking at the figures, and they were nearly all young professional women. And I do think, I mean, there's a number of issues with that. It may be that they're more law abiding, and weirdly, if you really follow the rules, you're less safe on a bicycle.
Wow.
Maybe as well that there is just a hostility. This, and it's not even explicit. It's just like someone in a massive truck feels really resentful of this person. I don't know. I can't really get to the bottom of it, why it would be, but
It's a difficult one.
So you've got a doctor's appointment coming up, and you're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on with your body. You need our free symptom tracker. It's like the receipts folder for your hormones. You can track the bloat, the mood swings, the brain fog, the mystery acne, and then roll it all into your next appointment like a hormonal pro. No more being brushed off or told it's all in your head. You've got the data. Download it for free today from our website and start advocating for yourself. www.thehouseofhormones.com and head to our free download section.
It is, and I've seen really nasty behavior towards young women on bicycles, which I think is driven by some sort of a jealousy or something. I mean, the C word and everything, just really, really awful, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of, this incel word. We only, and I hope we're not drifting off topic here, but we saw, the first time I ever saw it was about 10 years ago. There was some weirdo in Montreal who I think ran amok with a knife or a car or something. And after the whole thing happened and he was caught, they said, oh, he was an incel. And that was the first time I've heard the word. Now I seem to hear it everywhere. And so I think in tandem with your brilliant conversation about menopause, which is all about enlightening us, you've also got a shutting down of other people and minds closing. And not only that, a real static electrical hostility to this everything,
You're so right. Like with lots of the information and more research and women's health becoming a bigger topic, there does, and when things happen like that, at the moment it's happening with women's health, but it can often happen with other topics. And when that happens, there also does seem to be on the other side a rise of anger towards that happening, which is bizarre, especially with women's health. It's bizarre because it's like, why wouldn't we want to know more about the female body? On that topic, obviously you get so many callers and you speak to the nation daily. What's the biggest myth that you've heard on hormonal health?
The biggest myth, as in sort of the untrue, the sort of thing that's not true.
Something that you're like, seriously, people still think this?
Well, I think it's probably that it's the person probably who says, I sailed through it, and why can't young women sail through it? That's fundamentally it. So it's the idea. So lots of people go through the menopause without a problem. And when they get to a certain age, maybe 10, 15 years later, they take the view that this conversation that we're having now is just basically all part of being woke. And it's part of being sort of oversensitive about life. And so it is, why can't you just sail through it? How about that? It's interesting because I had the closest I can give you to anything sort of, I suppose, a hormonal disruption in my own body.
Yeah.
Was this. And it did teach me a lesson. We have an endocrine system, and the endocrine system does all the glands and the enzymes and whatever. And it's based, if I take my glasses off, right here at the tip of the nose, in the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is described as the conductor of the endocrine orchestra. And you have no idea what any of it's doing until it goes wrong. And it went wrong for me about 20 years ago. And it's partly a stress thing, but my thyroid went out of whack. So I had overactive thyroid. Now, there are two types of thyroid condition. The classic happens often older. In fact, it can happen with the menopause, which is underactive thyroid, which is you have no energy, you put on weight, and you need to probably take thyroxine for the rest of your life. The overactive thyroid is a very different thing, and it's a very interesting condition. We're not sure what brings it on. I'm certain in my case it was stress. I was just charging around as I haven't stopped really, but at the age of 35 doing 5 jobs and everything else, and also very kind of like always kind of scared of poverty and unemployment. And they certainly discovered that in Denmark, occupied Denmark in the Second World War, they had overactive thyroid went through the roof. So I think it must be stress related. One of the symptoms of overactive thyroid, which I didn't have, is where your eyeballs bulge. So you will see people sometimes with bulging eyeballs, and they may not be diagnosed, but you can immediately say you've got an overactive thyroid. What it does is it causes your emotions, your body to become like a racing car. So essentially, I think my body said, okay, you want to be in 5th gear all the time? That's fine. You can be in 5th gear when you're asleep. You can be, you're like a car that's revving, but not in gear. So you're always, you can imagine you really would get burnout. You get a stroke or heart attack or something. You get very thin. It's great for your career as long as you don't collapse. So you work even harder, but you don't sleep properly. And eventually I went to the doctor with something else, with some stomach complaint. And he said, when you walked in, I thought you were not a well man. So I'm going to do a full set of bloods on you. And he came out, he said, your thyroid is crazy, right? So there's a number of things they can do. They can cut some of it out. Didn't want that because they got to go via your voice box. They give you a tiny little radioactive pill, which actually, for various reasons, I didn't really fancy that. Or they give you a small pill called carbimazole, which they found in the 50s. And I took it for a year and I was right as rain, and I have been ever since. That's 20 years ago, right? But what that told me that was so interesting, and I should have realized it, but I didn't, because nobody ever does, is that the body is chemical. And that even includes moods. So while I was ill, I was quite road ragey. I was quite argumentative and snappy. And I just thought that's who I am. And then when I got better, I was like more zen, like I am now, really calm. And I thought, wow, mood is chemical. That was the thing that came to me. And this, I've always been interested as a result of that in overactive thyroids, that when the body's out of whack, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And had it not worked with this pill, this carbimazole, God only knows I would have had to go radioactive or something.
I have to laugh at you going, it was really good for my career. We could go with that headline, couldn't we? Overactive thyroids are good for your career, says
it was great for mine.
That's the headline. That's the headline.
That's it. There we go.
But obviously you've had an instance of that. So you've been able to apply your own knowledge to maybe talk about women's health and understand it a bit deeper. But loads of people maybe haven't been through their own things. In terms of clickbait, because I've just said, we could have this as the headline, couldn't we? Jremy Vine says this. In terms of clickbait, you must see so much of this. And in a world of misinformation, I think Instagram is an amazing place for women's health. However, in terms of it's allowed really amazing doctors that we've interviewed on here to have a voice, and women to hear about things that they never would have been able to. You mentioned walking into the doctors and the doctor saying, you don't look well, let's do a full overhaul. To be honest, there's probably loads of our listeners wanting to jump down their earphones at you there because women are just being completely ignored and gaslit by doctors.
I should say it was that the guy I went to see, I didn't want to go to a GP. It was a stomach complaint that in the end wasn't anything, but he was a private consultant, and I think he had the time. And I know I could give you his name. I've got his email and his phone number. He's a brilliant medic because he had the time. And these bloody GP appointments at 9 minutes each.
No. I think the problem as well, Jremy, for women is, and this is not against the GPs, it's not their fault. It's a whole systematic problem in my eyes, in my opinion. But a lot of GPs, and this is shocking, but and a lot of GPs are admitting this now, and they're saying it. They have less than 2 hours of education on hormones, so they don't know. They don't know. So, perimenopause, for example, cannot be diagnosed with a blood test. So women just keep hearing the word, your bloods are normal. Your bloods are normal. You can't go off your bloods. Our bloods are doing this every single day. So unless you're going to do a study and test our bloods 3 times a day for 3 months, you're not really going to get a proper. But anyway, what my question was going to be, in a world of all this misinformation, how do you cut through the noise of the clickbait?
Oh, I think find people you trust. So go, yourselves. You obviously don't have idiots on your podcast, with this one exception, and so you're and so once you give someone your seal of approval, then people can trust them. And somebody rang my show the other day and said social media is the new asbestos, and in 20 years' time they're going to be ripping it out of buildings wearing protective suits. And I think he's bang on. I think the whole social media thing is an absolute disaster for other reasons. But yeah, following people you trust should be okay. I mean, it should be. Some of the clickbait in my show. We'll do a show. It'll be perfectly normal, and then there'll be a headline in the Express or something saying, "Jremy show furious as Yasmin Elbai-Brown slaps down Shadow Chancellor in furious row." And I'm thinking, I don't even remember that, So it's the world of clickbait is so strange. Headlines used to tell you what the story was. Now they sort of say, you might be interested in reading the story. And they're just a way of reeling you in. It's slightly different, isn't it? I suppose with my broadcasting, we've ended up with certain people we really trust. Sarah Jarvis is an example, the doctor. Now, she won't mind me saying she's 63 now, I think. And she has recently had a bone scan. The doctor said she's got the bones of a 91-year-old.
Wow.
That may well be post-menopause with her. I don't know. But she talked about it on the air. So even the great doctors are not immune.
Yeah, I mean, you won't even be offered a bone scan until you're way older. But actually, like I suggested to you earlier, your bones and things can start to be affected from the age of 35. So when we think about that, if we think about you're not going to be offered a bone scan until you're in your 60s or 70s, I mean, the damage could have been done.
Yeah, I think we've got the healthcare issues come up again and again on my show. It's just a big issue here that we've got an NHS. We're pouring more money than ever. What is it, 200 billion a year into, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. It's creaking. The great paradox of it is, even if Ozempic makes us all thin and we live to be 100, we're then just going to have more patients for the NHS when those people get to 101, because they're just getting the illnesses later. So we're in a crowded island, and our health system isn't able to take care of us. And the canary in the coal mine is dentistry. In fact, Labour came in saying everyone would have a dentist, and I remember thinking, I don't see how that's possible. I'm keen to find out how that's going to be possible, because to my mind, there are whole areas, so-called dental deserts, where you have to go private, and loads of people have no NHS dentist option. And I think that if we carry on as we are with the NHS, it'll be like the NHS will be like that in other areas of healthcare. So we're obviously in a really stretched situation with healthcare. And there are areas that are particularly vulnerable, and I think women's health probably is one of them, because it's the non-urgent patient. It's not the broken leg. And teen mental health is another one, where you cannot get an appointment with the CAMS service for love nor money. So we've all got to work out individually what we do about that, because I don't think the state is going to help us.
I think the women's health. Listen, I personally think it's an exciting time. The conversation's being ramped up. We're going in a good direction. However, what I also know is that research on women's bodies, and I'm not just talking about hormonal issues, whether it's puberty, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, women in general, women's bodies have not been studied. We know this, don't? Every single medication was studied on men because it was cheaper to do it on men, and apparently easier because, of course, if you're going to do a study on women, you have to take into consideration where they are in their cycle, all these different things. So studies have not been done on women. So yeah, that's what's a little bit scary for me, because it's like, well, not only do we have, we need more information on hormonal health and everything that affects women. And yes, the ball's starting to roll in that direction. But we kind of need to look at every single medication. Like research has come out, women have been being offered heart stents, but that was only tested on men, and now they find out that actually that's really not good for women. So but what else is going to be uncovered? So women have just been being given medication for years, even down to things like seatbelts have only been tested on men. And like it just goes on and on and on, and it's kind of scary. And I'm sitting here laughing, and it's because we like to kind of have like a positive, what can we do about it, right? There's no point in sitting and dwelling and saying this happened, this is so annoying, and it is annoying, it is frustrating, and we do need to stand up for ourselves. However, how can we move forward? How can we make it better?
There's a book, isn't there? Caroline Criado Perez wrote, and I reckon you've read it, and it's the book about all the stuff about how they send up women into space, and they've not got spacesuits the right shape.
Yeah.
How door handles are too big. The whole thing. What is it called? It's not called Hidden Figures. It's something, or is it Invisible?
Just to point out on the space thing, I think was it a couple of years ago, and they sent a woman to space, and they sent her with something like 500 tampons, and she was going for a week, and everyone was like, what? But it was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm hoping my daughters are going to change all this. I mean, I said to them, look, one of you's prime minister, one of you's chancellor. You just work out which one.
Well, listen, I've heard a lot of things. There's a lot of chat about women wanting to just move to their own island and see how that goes, and making it woman only, and see how well it does. I've heard a lot of chat about this, and I kind of thought, but listen, one of the arguments was, often men are meant to be like the protector of the family, or they're meant to keep you safe. And one of the arguments for this all women island, they were like, but why do we need a protector? Who do we need to be kept safe from if there's no men?
I know, but then then that rankles with men, because they think, well, wait a minute, there's men and there's men. And
of course. I'm just saying what they said, right?
No, I know, but that's where the whole thing comes. So I noticed, just to put the other side of this, there's the debate at the moment that I've heard a few times, and I've done on my show, is if you are late at night a man walking behind a woman, what should you do? Now, 20 years ago, there wouldn't even have been a debate about this. You just keep walking, right? Yeah. And if you're walking faster than her, you're going to overtake her. Well, there's now a group, I would be in this group of people who think, I'm a bit concerned that she's not sure who's behind her, and is a 6'3" guy. So I can either overtake her really quickly so she just knows I'm out the way, or I can cross the side of the road. Now, and you know what? A lot of blokes are thinking this now, and they haven't thought it before, which to me is really interesting. But I maybe what's happened here is that the male world has, that brilliant word, bifurcated, where it's just gone to two separate poles, but quite a dramatic motion where you have got quite a lot of new men who are actually would be happy on the island. We wouldn't misbehave in a way. And also, but the trouble is that we're the ones who get beaten up by the guys on the other side anyway, because they're all good at fighting. So
it's really interesting that you've brought that up, actually, because that was actually one of my last questions for you. And it was, in this world, what would you say to men who wanted to be allies, so wanted to help women, whether it's, we've touched today on talking about safety issues and violence, but also women's health. So what would you say to men who want to be allies? What type of, and also, what was your advice when you're walking down the street behind a woman? What would you do?
Have you been feeling like your hormones are running the show? Been there? Same. Our ebook is your no BS glow up guide to hormonal health. We're talking facts, expert advice, and real life hacks, all in one gorgeously written download. So whether you're dealing with PMS, peri-menopause, or you're just tired of Googling what the hell is wrong with me, grab your copy now at www.thehouseofhormones.com, and we've tagged it below. We've got your back.
Well, on that point, it depends what the kind of geometry of the street, but I would normally think it's better to just quietly speed up and overtake her, and not to cause any worries on her side. But in central London, I which is where I'd normally be walking late at night, yeah, I think I would try and get past her, because then she got 2 seconds of thinking what's happening, and then I'm gone. But for me to be tracking 20 feet behind her for 5 minutes is more alarming. But at least I'm having a thought process, and I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
But as to men and conversation, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because there's a whole conversation going on within men at the moment about what the hell has happened to what does it mean to be male? Because if it's the case that women can exist perfectly happily on an island, and we know they're smarter, and we know they're more diligent and more able to multitask, and now the latest thing is that women see more colors than men. So, if you show a woman an Apple Mac, she can count 2,000 colors, and a guy can only see 800 or something. So men feel probably quite threatened by that. So I just think we all just need to tread carefully. I wouldn't want to make any snap decisions. As regards menopause, etc., I do think we need to talk about it. I was having a conversation with a neighbor the other day, and he said, and again, this is the conversation that you wouldn't have had 20 years ago. He said, "Oh, my wife," he named her, terrible menopause nightmare, absolute nightmare for her at every angle, So I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that." He said, "Yeah, she's just not been herself. It's got like everything, depression, panic." So he went through all the symptoms, and I thought, well, he's giving me a bit more than I need here, because I do know his wife. She may not want transmitted. On the other hand, I kind of appreciated that he'd had this lovely conversation with me. It's quite unusual. And yeah, and also he's a very caring guy. He's a very good dad.
And maybe he needed some support. Maybe he needed you to say, "Oh, that's all right. I understand." Or, maybe he was thinking, because listen, I think we should be open about the fact that perimenopause and the menopause transition is not just difficult for women, it's difficult for the whole family, it's difficult for the whole situation, and so it's difficult for everybody around them. I mean, my husband employs a lot of women in his team, and I try and empower him to understand female health so he can make better decisions that it's going to help everybody, right? And I always fully believe by helping women and being an ally to women, you're going to make your own life easier. So by having the conversation is a smart thing to do. And by educating yourself and empowering yourself with knowledge as a man, it's a smart thing to do. You're going to have an easier life, So even if it's for some reasons, do it.
I had on Ready 2, they got me to wear a menopause vest that made me overheat several times during the show. So it just creates warmth, and then it becomes quite hot. And it was just a good illustration of actual physical. Again, we're back with chemistry. Your personality's chemistry, your body's chemical. When things are out of whack, it's completely painful. So I had to wear that. And then the other day they gave me an endometriosis buzzer, and I think I've worn everything now. And this thing was like a tens machine, but it went up to 10, and they said we shouldn't take it beyond 5. And I said, to be honest, I'm doing it on the radio. Let's go 10. And it was unbelievably painful, because my whole belly went into kind of electrical spasm. And they said, well, that's just what some of us deal with all the time. And I know that's, again, slightly separate, but endometriosis, oh my God, that's an example of where blokes, always back in the day, was she's gone to hospital, it's women's trouble, don't ask any questions.
And PCOS and PMDD is now kind of finally getting a bit of light shone on it. And I spoke to a doctor, and I kind of explained to them, it was a US doctor, and I said, well, in the UK, it's having a light shine upon it because somebody on Married at First Sight had PMDD. And they said, isn't that sad that it had? And I said, well, it doesn't matter why it's having a light shone on it. It regardless of where it's come from, it's still really good. Listen, on that topic of speaking about physical symptoms, I have a little game that I would love to play with you. Would you like to play with me?
Yes.
Would you rather?
Yes. Okay, good. Now, what is it called?
Okay, so we're going to play a game of Would You Rather. I'm going to give you 2 symptoms. Now, listen, I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there for all of our listeners. This is not to belittle any of these symptoms. However, I would just like to know which one Jremy Vine would rather. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Jremy Vine, would you rather have hot flushes or brain fog during an important meeting?
Hot flushes.
Why is that?
Always just protect the brain. This is the one thing. I just, if I can't think straight, nothing else is going to function.
Okay.
Whereas the hot flush, I think I would try to pass off somehow.
Would you rather deal with night sweats or constant irritability for a week?
Night sweats. Because night sweats are at night and constant irritability is constant. And I don't, yeah.
But night sweats at night. If the night sweats at night made you not sleep, would you then in turn be constantly irritable all week?
I might be, but I'm hoping that if I've chosen night sweats, I don't have the irritability. But you're right. If I had that as well, that would be.
I'm just saying one could lead to another.
You're right. You're right.
Would you rather gain 10 pounds overnight or lose your libido for 6 months?
Oh my God. What?
I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing.
I'm going to have to go 10 pounds overnight.
You'd rather gain 10 pounds overnight than lose your libido for 6 months. Okay.
Holy. Yeah.
Number
Okay.
4. Would you rather cry at every commercial or go absolutely psycho over a really tiny thing?
Definitely cry at every commercial, which is a good thing, because I think people who don't cry at commercials, there's a red flag there.
There's another headline.
I suppose it's crying at every commercial is different. I mean, crying at the John Lewis commercial at Christmas, fine. No, you're right. Every commercial, God, no, I think I would probably. I quite like crying at commercials.
Crying at every commercial or go psycho at the tiniest thing? Which one?
I don't want to go psycho at the tiniest thing.
Would you rather have mood swings that nobody understands or energy crashes at 3 p.m. every day? It's getting quite difficult, isn't it?
Ooh. I think I'll go energy crash. I notice the theme here. I'm trying to avoid stuff that affects the thinking and the brain and the mood, because those are the things that I'm most frightened of. So where you offer me a physical symptom and then you say, or you can be psycho or whatever, I'm going for the physical thing. So I'm going to go energy crashes.
Would you rather lose your head hair due to hormonal changes or get unexpected body hair in unwanted places?
Well, definitely the second one, because the first one is unthinkable.
Okay. Would you rather have insomnia every night or sleep for 10 hours and still feel exhausted?
Oh God, I knew you were going to hit me with something like that. Disrupted sleep is an absolute killer.
It's the worst.
Because I really want to reach out to anyone who has that, because it's awful. And the irony is, when you sleep a lot and you feel more tired, you're then in a terrible cycle. You just end up doing 3 or 4 hours a night and drinking loads of coffee.
Have you spoken on your show about the new research that's been done that now says that women need between 9 to 10 hours sleep and not the 8 hours sleep that we've been told?
Is that another male-female thing? I didn't know that.
That's it. So that has just recently, because when we've all been told you need 8 hours sleep, the research was only done on men. It's never been done on women. So now the research has been done on women. Of course, women need more hours sleep. And of course, for years, women have been portrayed as, a little bit lazier or things like that, because it's, she was lying. No, because of our hormones, research has shown that we need more sleep. Just another little...
Okay, I'll remember the choice. I think I'll go insomnia.
Would you rather experience low testosterone symptoms at work or in the bedroom?
What? Oh God, at work or I suppose at work. If you've got to, I've got to answer that.
Jremy Vine would rather experience low testosterone symptoms at work and not in the bedroom, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Number 9.
Right.
Would you rather have unpredictable sweats or unpredictable hunger?
Unpredictable hunger.
Okay.
Because I could manage that maybe.
Okay.
A little bit better.
You could bring a snack everywhere. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to diminish it.
Would you rather feel emotionally numb or overly sensitive to everything?
We're back with the TV commercials here. I think I don't like numbness. I'd have to be overly sensitive. I'm sorry, that's probably a weird answer. I just think I always worry about not being in touch with my emotions. So I would go for that one.
Well, that was an amazing game of Would You Rather. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having the what's the word? Guts to answer so candidly, so honestly, so openly, because so many people would be scared that you're going to get pounced upon and somebody has one of those symptoms is going to shout at you. And I just think it's really important that men do understand that we want you in this conversation. You're welcome in this conversation. And also, you probably know more, and certainly you, because you've spoken about this topic so much more, but a lot of men probably know more than they think. And also, a lot of women don't even understand their own body. So it's about educating everybody and helping everybody, you know. So thank you so much for coming on and having humor and chatting to us. And it's just it's so important, Jremy, and we really appreciate it here at the House of Hormones.
Thank you, House of Hormones. Thank you so much for having me.
Have you, just to end, have you got any questions for me, or is there anything that final words, final thoughts that you want to say about
this topic? I was just thinking, I read a book recently by I tell you who it was, Harriet Gibson, and her surname is spelled Gibsone. And she'd interviewed me, and she'd written a memoir, and I said, "Oh, I must read it," and I read it, and it turned out to be about exactly this, that she was just propelled into the menopause in her 30s, and the agony of that for her. And it's funny how when you start listening out for things, they come up everywhere. And I think we probably blokes haven't really been attuned to this. But then once you start listening for it, you hear it. And if you hear it, you can understand it.
I think men, if they realize, if they just supported even a little bit, how different that would make, you know, the work for themselves and for their partners. Thank you so much, Jremy Vine. Yeah. We've absolutely loved having you, and thank you for humoring our quick fire Would You as well.
It's a pleasure, honestly. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. If you want to stay connected, follow us on our social media. And here's something really important. We're on a mission to secure more funding for women's health initiatives. Sign our government petition today and help us amplify our voices for better healthcare resources and support. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.